third of the art group Penthouss with my collaborators Anna Lan and Jonathan Trichter. And we're really happy that you're here with us today to celebrate the launch of our book, which is published by C.C.Books, which is about an artwork that we made back last October, and a subsequent film.
Could you go after shot? Yeah, better.
I'd like to speak in which I'd like to thank, first of all, Brian, who's here from Paris today, who's from C.C.Books. Thank you for inviting us on this journey and for making this beautiful book with us. We're really grateful. It was a privilege. Thank you to Reference.point, Jonah and Sophia, particularly for inviting us and hosting us here today. Thank you to Aindrea. Aindrea is an art historian, a curator, and also author of A Brief History of Protest Art, which was published by Tate earlier this year. And we're going to be in conversation with her for the next, 20 minutes, about that. Yeah, exactly. And talking about the artwork, and then we'll open it up if you have any questions, and then we'll screen the video of the piece at the end. It's 8 minutes, and then please have some drinks, we'll have some DJ sets, we'll have some music, so enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing, so glad to be here. So yeah, there's so much to unpack with this artwork. I remember watching it on Instagram, and we'll talk about that as a lens later. But I was completely moved and really found it very relevant with a lot of the current conversations coming out today. So I think a great place to start is just asking how the artwork came about. What was the catalyst for Call to Arms? The catalyst, as in how did it begin?
Well, we've all lived throughout the last years on social media and watched the world constantly get more and more saturated with police brutality in so many different countries that are so far away from each other, yet they share this connected, symbolized entity that is recognizable, doesn't matter what language you speak. You see it, you instantly know what it means, and this was the first kind of ignition in our minds of we should bring this symbol into an art space and take a real look at it outside of the streets and analyze a little bit of what's happening in the public space around us.
Hello. So I think before this work, we actually never did straightforward political work. And before that, we always, like in our studio times, how we work, we question ourselves, we live life. And I think in the last years, as young people, as artists, queer, or any other small group, we really experienced hard times. And I think in our conversation, after doing so many works about more philosophical themes, we had this conversation that we really want to address what is happening now in our reality. And for sure also in the past there've been, problems, we are humans, we're always problems, and how the society works and built, but I think for us, because we really also started to live this kind of problems in our friends, we really wanted to address it, and it was very important for us as artists to address these themes.
So yeah, thinking about again the current landscape of these discussions, we're literally living in a time when the right to protest is being challenged, and there's an ever sort of more increasing presence of white police and that image. I wondered whether you saw the work as a message or a warning for the future.
And I think first of all, we were very interested in just looking at the mechanisms of control and power and how those manifest. So we first were looking at these uniforms, which in themselves are very symbolic, they're very recognizable. These figures of riot policemen, they appeared throughout different political systems, geopolitical systems, and yet they all look almost identical. It becomes this sort of ubiquitous symbol of power, but this very also ambiguous symbol of power of who they're actually protecting, because often these situations escalate into violence against civilians, So we became kind of interested first in these uniforms and the way they're deployed, the way they're designed very much to instill intimidation, instill kind of this sense of kind of force and so-called order. And then also in the choreography, we'll show the film afterwards, and the choreography that we worked with Aindrea, who's an amazing movement artist and also dance therapist, drew very much from real riot control tactics, so real kind of moves that are used by the police to move audience around, to kind of like shepherd and herd in a way. And what you don't see in the video but was very present in the performance was the way that visitors were physically moved around the space all the time. So they were literally kind of forced into corners and forced to move. So it started out not as kind of necessarily, I think, a warning, but it was more wanting to look at those mechanisms and how kind of power is instrumentalized and how these they can be used in kind of movement, in design, in uniform, almost kind of like a study of it in a way. And then afterwards also, there was an opportunity, I think, for to bring in people who may never have been in these situations, who haven't been to a riot, who've only experienced it through screens and phones, and to actually experience in a place that is, they know, safe, to experience actually what it is like being faced with these people. It brings more of an empathy, I think, with people who find themselves in these situations. If you've got anything to add to that.
I think what is interesting about your question is that when we started the process, riot police was always used, but we actually did it during the Gilets jaunes in Paris. And me and Anna, even though we come from Israel and we live in a very difficult reality and we see military every day, we never saw this amount of policemen in our life, and I think this is what really made us to take this work and to create it. And then the time passes and it takes time to do a project like that, and I think for us it was a warning because then Hong Kong happened and then BLM started and this work just became more and more and more relevant. So I think it became a bit also to a warning because as we were creating the work, it just kept being more and more relevant, and these suits or this police started to appear really everywhere.
I wanted to ask about the decision to choose dance as one of the sort of conceptual constructs, because I think that performance is a really amazing and very potent move in protest art. I think that the idea of dance and sort of incorporating these sort of immersive experiences is also very potent. So I'd love to understand how you made that decision, how you collaborated with the dancers, the influences, etc.
First of all, we are used to work with dancers for many years, and this is a medium in which we swim. And also, when you think about a political movement or a dance movement, it has the same word describing it. So, using movement in a work that is very physical, it only made more sense in that relation. And also, this is also what led us to work with dancers who are more coming from the worlds of crumb or hip hop, where it's more street related and based. Crumb is based on street fight formations. So it was easier also to build around that, because if you take a person who is not very physical or not a dancer specifically, it will actually be very difficult to carry these uniforms. They're very heavy, very clumsy, and you really need to be flexible and durable and familiar with body work to actually carry them around in a way. So that's one. I see. Yeah. So that's what goes there.
Yeah, and I think and also dance, I think the medium of performance, initially it became a film afterwards, but the initial medium of performance was very important to us as well, because it was very important for us, to have people in physical space, but also alongside the dancers who were embodying these figures of the riot policemen, the visitors, by coming and confronting them, automatically started playing the role of civilians, and suddenly there was kind of this mutual exchange of actually this almost this reconstruction of real life scenarios in a way, and of course, but in a more kind of safe setting. So I think the performance is very special these days, because I think now we're able to be so ubiquitously present all the time through the internet, through our phones, through our connectivity, and yet physical presence is so rarefied now, which is why protests are really important, because we are occupying physical space in physical streets, and that is a sign of power. And in the same way, doing something which was live and performance-based meant that people were occupying the same shared space, the same shared moment for a minute. And one important component of the performance was that afterwards we had a waiting room outside the main area where the performance took place. And actually, not that we kind of created that necessarily, but people started coming out, and people who didn't know each other, who'd come in kind of at the beginning, they were waiting to go to the performance, they were on their phones and come out, and they'd talk about their experience and kind of how they felt in there, and oh, like, that really like shook me, or like, I found that really like, so that became this amazing kind of moment of sharing. So that splinter of shared time and experience, choose over my phone. That splinter of shared time and experience is actually very precious, which I think is why we kind of explained how we use dance, but also the medium performance is very important for this work.
I think also, I mean, of course there is brutality, and it's like the situation itself. I think when we started to investigate and to do our research, like if you think about riot police, if you would put a drone up in the air, it looks even like a performance. It looks something that is a bit out of space or not really related to our natural world. And I think when you see riot police, like something about it is very dance related. And when we started also to do our research, we went to the dark web, and we found a lot of videos of Chinese, Japanese, Russian techniques of riot police and how they do their practice for it. And I think it's very dance related, movement related, and it's interesting to take dancers and to deform this kind of control on humans.
Amazing. I was just when you were talking about how you had to sort of get dancers with the outfits and with the riot costumes. I was wondering whether you can share some things that you've learned during the process and your aims, or when you restage the performance. And then afterwards, I think we should actually watch it, because there's so much to comment on, and then we can have some more questions. But I just want to understand, what have you learned, and what type of things would you like to incorporate later on?
We learned so much, literally from the first second of, even before coming to the dance, just researching on how are we going to get actual police gear. And we found out that you can just buy everything online and it delivers to your house, which is terrifying. That's one big part of the information that we learned. Another thing, after it came and we started rehearsing with the dancers, we learned that longer than an hour in this suit, it really makes you angry, sweaty, tired, and this sort of physical situation brings a lot of the violence we believe that is connected to these kind of scenes. So people who are situated in this kind of uniforms where you literally can't see beyond your own sweat in the helmets, the people that are working in that for 8 hours a day, they come as raging bulls into a situation that is easily escalated into violence, partly because of just the design of the uniform. What else did we learn?
I think we learned or we knew that most of the privileged people that go to museums are never been to riots. And this was great, and I think this was also part of the idea for, I think like a lot of people, even if they're like Democrats, liberal, and very active, and many of them, especially people, not, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of people that actually came to the performance never been into riots. So it was interesting like to see their perspective or experience during the work. And I think also the work just showed us again like why art is important, and I think art is very important because it's a tool to change perspective of humans. And I think this work really changed the perspective because this waiting room was really the magical moment of the work, because we really learned that we all have traumas. And I think one of the most beautiful things in riots is that, as Helen mentioned before, once you come for the same reason, here it was different because no one attempted to riot, but still when you go through this kind of experience, how close you get suddenly to another person. And I think it was really beautiful because we had so many different people coming, some people from Somalia, some people from Paris, some people from Israel, some people from Palestine. And we, through this work, they were able to have a really deep dialogue after experiencing it, and it was just, for me, such a beautiful moment as a collective, as artists, as a group of people to really have a moment, because I think it has the leak sometimes in the art world that we see so much beautiful art, but I think it's also important to change sometimes the point of view of the visitor.
Should we watch the film?
Thank you.